A couple of weeks ago, you outlined the potential of famines caused by Putin's insane, war in Ukraine.
That's not what I said, but sure.
Okay, I'm framing it the way I want. But you commented on the possible famine caused by Putin's insane war.
Again, not what I said, but sure. Yeah.
Well, let's go to famine before Sachs loses his mind about Biden's quote of regime change, which I'll let you end on, Sachs. You get your victory lap. But somebody came for you and said, hey, listen, Friedberg basically doesn't know what he's talking about because commodity markets are showing that India and other folks are going to step up and there's not going to be a problem with famine. So can you unpack that for us?
I will tell you that we are already seeing a lot of scrambling happening for redundancy in these commodity supply chains. And there's a couple of issues, which I highlighted before, I'll highlight again. Number one is just the ability to export. So while there may be commodity products sitting in these markets, getting them on ships out of Russia, out of Ukraine, even if sanctions and trade restrictions are lifted and make them available, is very difficult because a lot of the carriers are concerned about insurance and liability as they would be forced to go into a port and do a transaction with an entity that they're supposed to not do transactions with. So there's a lot of reasons why these ships are not going to port, not picking up product, and not bringing it to where it needs to go. Critical risk in Africa in the near term. So this is an acute problem with respect to transport. The next problem is with respect to planting. As of this week, and I'm going to put a couple of links in here, and these links, Nick, are not in order with respect to what I'll say, but I'll kind of put a bunch of these things out here. But there is an expectation that we could see up to an 80% decline in planted acres in the Ukraine. And there's a bunch of really good anecdotes in this particular story about how farmers are scared about going out and planting because drones might blow them up. And I mean, look, you're in the middle of a war zone. You're not in a rush to go out and plant. And so there's a lot of planting that needs to happen in order for us to have, the expectation of the supply coming out of the field in about 6 months. So that's kind of the second stage of the problem, is a large export market for goods coming out of Ukraine and Russia we might have a kind of significant reduction in inventory as the number of acres that are planted goes down. And then the third thing that I highlighted before, which is absolutely still very true, and I put some data in here that you can all look at, is related to the price of fertilizer. So fertilizer prices through the roof because nat gas has gone up. So ammonia prices have gone up. Potash exports are prohibited from Russia. So potash has gone up. And so as a result, we're seeing fertilizer prices shoot up. And in a lot of countries, what I've included here in this particular link in the chat, and Nick on the YouTube, you can kind of put this on the screen, but there's a guy named Gary Schnitke. Gary is the ag economist. He's like the number one ag economist in the world. He's at University of Illinois. Everyone reads all his stuff in the industry. This guy breaks everything down to unit economics, numbers, helps people make decisions about what to plant, when, what the economics are. And he highlights the current economics for planting in Illinois. Illinois is the largest corn producing state in the U.S. and a critical supplier of our national kind of food supply. And he points out that as of right now, you would have to invest in Illinois about $810 to have a $243 return on corn because the price of fertilizer has gone so high. So you invest $810, you expect to make a little over $1,000. And these are not assuming rent. The problem is when you factor in the cost of rent, the average rent in Illinois is $227. So a lot of farmers in Illinois rent their land, about half do. And so for a lot of farmers, it's actually uneconomical, not just in Illinois, but around the world now, where the cost of the inputs, the cost of rent, the cost of production exceeds the expected profit coming out of the farm. And so farmers are not going to plant. And so, we're seeing kind of a major issue with these farmers around the world kind of making planting decisions right now that are informed by upside down economics. This is being monitored. Fortunately in the US, the USDA reported today that it looks like the price of corn is such that a lot of farmers are going to go back and plant soybeans. And we're seeing basically a historic planting survey coming out today that says farmers are in fact going to go out in the field. They are in fact going to plant. But this is not true everywhere. We haven't done the calculus on it yet, but there is a ton of anecdotal support and a ton of survey data that's coming out showing that farmers aren't going to plant the acres that they normally would plant because costs are so high. That means there's going to be less production over the next year. That means famine hits us in a year. That's a big problem.